Greetings. Welcome to Cyber Focus, your source for international business information. I'm your host, Ryan Craven, and our guest today is Scott Massey, co-founder and CEO of Heliponix. Scott holds a bachelor's in mechanical engineering technology and a certificate of entrepreneurship and innovation from Purdue University. While at university, Scott worked part-time at the Purdue University Horticulture College and assisted in the design of a NASA-funded automated hydroponic plant growth chamber with the goal of growing sustainable food in space colonies. This experience inspired him to co-found Heliponix, formerly HydroGrow LLC, his senior year at university. The goal of this company is to identify the most efficient form of agriculture that consumes the least amount of space, energy, and water without compromising the commitment to growing the highest quality food in consumer households through smart garden appliances called Grow Pods and G-Pod subscriptions. Scott is responsible for all the continued design improvements, manufacturing operations, and overseeing the strategic plan of the entire business. Today, the company employs several engineers in expanding their network of Grow Pods deployed in the market. The Grow Pods have been named Indiana's Best New Tech Product for 2018 by TechPoint through the Miria Award. Awesome, Scott. Thanks again for joining us today. Could you kind of give us a kind of quick background on your company?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ryan. So Heliponix was founded in 2016 by myself, Scott Massey, and my co-founder, Ivan Ball. But we originally met each other while previously working as research engineers on a NASA-funded hydroponic research study at Purdue University. The purpose of that research study was to determine more efficient lighting options to grow plants in space. And from that research, we had the inspiration to develop a consumer growing appliance. And believe it or not, not too different from the way astronauts could grow their own food on the space station. We envision that in being embodied as a consumer appliance for individuals to grow at a household level. So at that point in 2016, we had left that career role and founded this company, Heliponix, where we provide consumers with the Grow Pod Smart Garden Appliance. Think of it as a greenhouse the size of a dishwasher for your home, and G-Pod subscriptions. And those are very similar to K-Cups, for example, if I were to use the consumer Keurig coffee maker analogy. But the goal is to allow consumers to grow pure produce in the convenience of their home without any external supply chain dependencies through our automated appliance and consumable platform.
Yeah, that's super interesting, especially kind of given, I always grew up with enough of space, a yard, a place like that. But I can certainly imagine that in some of the more densely populated areas where you don't have access to kind of any space, this would be a good way to get some fresh produce that you normally wouldn't have that option without having to actually go and purchase it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, right now it's September 28th, 2020. We're seeing a lot of the fragility of our current agricultural supply chain really challenged by the coronavirus pandemic, whether it's being able to source labor to harvest and pick in the field, have labor in the facilities, or even just having that interstate commerce. We have a very long and extensive and frankly inefficient supply chain that's required to get food from point A to point B. What we're doing is really not too different than what our ancestors did. We're proposing an agrarian lifestyle, but we're taking away the labor element for you and having it in a condensed, contained appliance to have inside the household. And if you look at how much the human population is growing, we're going to be approaching 9.8 billion people in the year 2050, according to the United Nations. We must increase food output by 70% in the next 30 years. That'll be really difficult to do with current consumption and production rates of agriculture accounting for 80% of all freshwater usage in the United States and 50% of land usage. So we really need to develop methods that are not just environmentally sustainable to produce food for these future generations, but is both profitable, both for the consumer and the company together, to really have a model that could be scaled globally. And that's exactly what we're doing here.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like the other benefit of that kind of a system would be mitigating the need for pesticides, chemicals, pest control that is currently used in a lot of kind of traditional, produce methods.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. The issue with pesticides is that they work very well. If you're growing in a field, you're competing with the natural ecosystems, and you can expect that if you grow a crop, pest will come. And they've developed, obviously, chemical solutions for that. However, there has been strong implications as to what this has done towards our environment and our future productivity of the land. But what's so great about our system is that because it's the self-contained closed device, we have no need for these external pests. We keep them out from the the beginning. You know, the technology is oftentimes described as CEA, controlled environment agriculture. We take all the stuff we don't like about the environment and we simply don't let it happen in our system. So we don't need those harmful synthetic compounds in our system. It's totally natural. We even say it's beyond organic because the qualities of such a good precedent, you would be challenged to find that equivalent premium quality even in a grocery store. It's more comparable to what you'd find at a farmer's market, grown the moment you're ready to eat it, no refrigeration required.
Awesome. That sounds fantastic and extremely interesting. I believe that you went through the Indiana Accelerator Program. What kind of drew you to that experience, and kind of what's been the benefits of that?
If we want to mail seeds internationally, there comes with that certain regulatory compliance checks that needs to be done. Now, the majority of that regulation has been on industrial agriculture. So if I wanted to move one truckload of corn seed, right, to another country, you would need to have certain things like phytosanitary certifications, which are regulated by the Department of Natural Resources on a state-by-state basis. Having been a kind of new entrant into the agriculture industry, my background being manufacturing and engineering, I was less familiar with the international agricultural exportation regulatory compliance protocols that needed to be in place. But fortunately, through this program, I saw an excellent opportunity to have the state of Indiana and work with the regulators proactively to understand what regulation we need to be compliant for, not just as the industry as a whole, but what do we predict being new challenges for our entirely new industry approach. We're not mailing shipping containers of seeds. We're doing very small direct to consumer quantities. So being able to take all of that existing regulatory standards and kind of retool it into a more consumer, direct to consumer approach has been, I think, an amazing experience with that accelerator. So not only did we learn what we needed to do, we developed a strategy protocol to be compliant with that going forward. So it was an excellent program overall.
And that's really interesting when I've had an opportunity to talk to the director of the Indiana State Department of Agriculture recently on an interview. And it's interesting to hear your perspective of talking about those regulations of exporting. It's not just a product. It's not just, an item or, a garment or something like that. Yeah, I didn't even really consider the whole agricultural component that would go into what you're trying to move. And when you start talking about that, I imagine, across the world, bringing in different agriculture to different areas, there's got to be a little bit more regulation into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Certain countries just flat out ban certain agricultural products from others. And that could be everything from ecological risk, maybe in that part of this world, some microbe exists that would be catastrophic for corn in the United States. South African corn has a lot of issue getting into the United States, for example. And then, of course, there's political reasons. There's a lot of trade deals, things of that nature happening. And oftentimes agricultural commodities are some of the first items that they'll throw under the bus or use as a concession for a larger deal. So any of these factors can heavily influence that. And the only way to get a definitive answer is to find someone who is in the regulator position themselves or has been in industry, possibly a synergistic firm that has gone through similar regulatory compliance requirements and is able to speak to that with experience. Unfortunately, we were able to get both out of the Export Accelerator Program. So again, it was great time spent for us.
Yeah, it's a group of guys, and they all know. I mean, they've been doing it forever. So it's amazing what resources are actually available to small and medium sized enterprises that they don't necessarily know exist. Really, how did you know that you were going to get into exporting, or you knew you were going to start wanting to ship overseas? Was that kind of part of the strategic plan, or did that come afterwards?
I'll say yes, because that sounds better. But to be honest, no, not really. Because when I started this company as an engineer, I saw an opportunity to file a patent on a much more energy efficient design that had not yet been done. But I soon realized that without a business, IP only goes so far unless you have an immediate buyer lined up for it. You need to prove the business case yourself. So as we've grown the business, we've kind of reached just natural growth pains of individuals reach out to us from other countries or potential partners. And in order to be prepared for those market kind of opportunities, we needed to have these compliances now. Now, being a hardware technology company in the agricultural technology industry, we're developing physical things you can hold in your hand and touch and feel. So to make decisions on tooling and manufacturing and how you're going to prepare and package these items now, you must be cognizant of what's going to be a requirement later, because it very much controls that decision early on. So being at that stage now where we're beginning to tool up and developing things that will be exported, we needed to understand those requirements in advance today. So that's where we proactively enlisted ourselves into the program after hearing about it from the IEDC and the ISBDC, who've been incredibly helpful in making resources available to us as an Indiana small business company.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. That all makes complete sense, and it kind of tracks with the different conversations I've had with the folks that are offering those programs, the folks that are teaching those programs, and then just some of the other SMEs that have had the opportunity to kind of go through those. So what kind of follow up on that, how has that going through that really impacted your business directly?
I think there's an immediate, design decisions that need to be made. So from, you could say, the earliest stages of conceptual product kind of ideation, it's heavily influenced that up until prototyping. So now we're actually executing on designs and things that were recommended through that program, up until now starting to export into some of these markets as some kind of early pilot runs. So we're very much putting what we've learned into practice immediately, not just in the short term, but we'll do so for the long term. Foreseeable future.
Fantastic. How has the whole pandemic changed anything on your end from a just really from any kind of perspective that you're willing to share?
Booming. People are scared to go to the store, rightfully so. There's a lot of exposure that could happen undue due to COVID in that sort of crowded setting, and I don't blame them. Food deliveries are up. We're seeing all sorts of grocery items happen in a contactless way, just explode as of recently. But the one item that always and consistently falls short when it comes to food delivery is fresh produce, the highly perishable, highly valuable stuff. And we often find times that when we meet with consumers, where you buy your fresh produce could oftentimes be the deciding factor of where you buy all other grocery food items, because it is the most highly perishable, therefore most frequent in your purchasing habits. Our issue has been fulfilling orders. We're certainly not immune to supply chain delays, which I think anyone in manufacturing is experiencing to some capacity if you have global components used in your system. But as far as consumer demand, it's up. Our biggest challenge is fulfilling that demand at this stage as a small company, but I'm thankful that is the problem we're running into. There could be a lot worse things that could be happening, but I think our in-home cultivation model is very socially distant, and we've just been positioned well to inherit this new contactless economy that we're going to see going forward.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing. One question that kind of came up in my mind, and you might not have an answer to this or might not want to share it, but again, you're talking about having this product overseas in other countries and whatnot. Are you enabling? I'm trying to think of the best way to describe this. Are you going to start setting up local regional produce, for that country or that region?
Yeah, I think having a distribution network is certainly within the realm of possibilities as we expand and kind of deepen our foothold within specific countries. But one of the things in this program that we were able to do is also identify laws that I think were more catered towards larger businesses. So like I said in the beginning, we're not mailing shipping containers. We're mailing very small, like $26 direct to consumer packages. So being able to even meet with our legislators who have some influence on that legislation to get it to where we could mail these from Indiana to these markets for the long term, direct to consumer residential households from our factory is very possible to do with the business model that we've developed. So we're hoping we can retain as much of that here, but there will likely be an inevitable point where we need to set up regional sales distribution offices into respective continental or country regions.
Perfect. Well, Scott, thanks for sharing that information with us. It sounds like the accelerator and those different organizations and programs really gave you that information that you needed and kind of helped to boost that perspective for you.
Yeah. I would say going through this accelerator is the difference between saying maybe, we think, we might, and saying we will, we have to, with certainty. And what it gives you is confidence. And at the end of the day, whether you're talking to your customers, your partners, your investors, your confidence is a direct reflection on how prepared you are for that market. And I would say this program gives you the peace of mind. You can walk away with confidence and say, we can be in this market by this point, and these are the exact steps we need to do so. So I highly recommend that any company that can get into this program, get in, because frankly, it is an amazing deal, and they're really missing out if they don't.
Well, that's what they mentioned. This last round of the accelerator program was the busiest they've ever had. And there was a wait list. And I think a lot of that is to do with the pandemic. People are understanding that, hey, to kind of diversify, you need to export. And how do you even begin doing that? And so I think that trend will continue to grow. I think the pandemic has highlighted just the overall global, enterprise that is the majority of our products and the market in general. And thanks for sharing.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me here. It's been a pleasure.
That's it for this edition of Cyber Focus. If you have any comments or suggestions for future topics, please drop us a line at cyber@indiana.edu.